Hello, Kerbal Nuts, and welcome to Kerbal Space Program 1.1 Career Mode Tutorial Part 4. Today we are going to be doing our first lunar landing, and we're going to be landing today on Minmus. We land on Minmus first for a few reasons. The primary one is that landing on Minmus is a little bit easier because the gravity well is a little bit smaller. Flying there is a little bit harder, landing there is a little bit easier. But before we do that, I want to go over the few changes I've made to my Space Center since we last talked. I have upgraded the mission control to level 2, and I've taken a few new contracts. Science data, space from Minmus, flag on the Mun, science data from space, plant a flag on Minmus, flag on the Mun, satellite in orbit, and rendezvous 2 Vestals. So those are my contracts right now. And I also upgraded the VAB so that instead of 30 parts, we can now go up to 255. Which is going to let us build a ship capable of landing on Minmus. And it's conveniently, I already have one ready, but I'm going to talk through some of the little features of it that make it particularly of value to us. So, at the very top of the ship, we have our command pod with the 2 drogue chutes. I'm still using those. I'm not going to keep using them for much longer, but for this is my last mission, I think I'm going to have those on the ship. We have the MK-16 parachute, and we have the photo panels. The photo panels are there so that this command pod can generate electricity the whole way till it lands, because we're going to want that RCS wheels to be cranking out as we fly down. We have our heat shield. And then we're going to put the stack decoupler on with some lights just so we can see our landing if we end up landing on the dark side of the planet, of the moon. We have our service bay in which we have 2 batteries, 2 thermometers, they're on either side, and 2 mysterious goo units to help us collect our science. And then under that we have the Science Junior. We have a FLT 400 and then the Terrier liquid fuel engine. This is a very efficient engine, and it's going to be perfect for landing. Basically, any space travel you do in the earlier stages of the game, the Terrier engine is probably the one you want flying. Not always, but it's one of the better ones. We have our landing legs. When you put landing legs on a ship, you always want to check and make sure you have enough clearance to actually land the ship. Sounds stupid, but especially some of the larger engines like the Poodle, that are very long, despite the fact that they're for landing and space flight stages, they'll clip. So you just want to make sure that you're not going to have your engine blow up, even though your landing legs are touching down just perfect. Then we have a FL 400, 800, 800, 800, so 3 800s, 1 400, and the 45 engine. 4 back thumper rockets, and the nose cones, the decouplers, and the delta winglets. If we check our Ker, we'll see that we have about 6,000 Delta V for Kerbal, which is more than enough for us to go to Minmus and back. If you have never landed on a on any sort of body before, I might want to crank this up a little bit by either adding another back booster or a little bit more fuel here. But for the sake of this flight, we're going to be totally fine because I'm going to be able to land it as is. So we're going to save this, and then we're going to hit launch. We're going to send this baby up to Minmus. I didn't introduce myself. Once again, I am Brendan the Kerbal Man. I am a graduate student. I don't have any background in science outside of a minor that I tried to fulfill in college in astronomy, but I'm a big space enthusiast and a lover of Kerbal Space Program. And I am going to be doing a lot of these videos going over the various stages of career mode. So let's launch the vehicle. Come on. Now that I started talking to you, it doesn't want to launch. Oh, it's because my stages are locked. Come on. There we go. We're going to start our gravity turn. We're going to turn to about there, and then I'll lock it. At this point, we're just going to hook onto the prograde and fly on up. I'm going to tilt it a little bit more, but not much. That's good. Great. Yeah, like I said, we're going to Minmus. The gravity well, Minmus is much smaller. which means that landing on it is much easier, I think, than landing on the mud. Because on the mud, you really have to have a fair amount of fuel in the vehicle to slow yourself down. And on Minmus, you can do it with a really small ship. So I think it's a little bit easier. Is it 100% easier? I mean, there might be some people who argue with me, but I think that this is the starting point if you want to practice your landings. The other reason is it's really easy to fix it if you make a mistake and you have to abort on Minmus at the last second. It doesn't take a ton of fuel to take back off, so it's easier to do. Alright, so we'll decouple our solid fuel boosters and check our apparatus. I knew we weren't going to be there yet, but we will soon. We're going to get this to about 80. I'm not going to turn on the physics warp because it takes... because it wobbles the ship a little bit, and I want to make sure we get up smoothly. I do have a pretty close... I am flying pretty close to my limit for fuel, so we want to make sure that we do this smoothly. We're not sitting here messing around trying to line it up perfectly. When you're cutting it close, you have to fly a better trajectory. So there we are above 70, and we will be at 80 in just a second. Technically, you could stop at any point now, but I like to do 80 because it gives me a little wiggle room in case I warp too fast or something goes wrong. Now I'm just going to click on the apparatus and stretch out the prograde marker until I have a circular orbit, and that should happen pretty good. You want to basically have it so your apparatus and your parabasis are on opposite sides, but that's not really... I must be off just slightly. There we go. 82, 78. That's good enough. So now we're just going to physics warp until we are out of the atmosphere, which should be in just a second. Computer's lagging a little bit. There we go. Yeah, we want to perform our burn. We're about halfway. Actually, we should have done it already. The reason I say we should have done it already is that you want to burn when you are about halfway to your node. So if my node is 1 minute, I want to perform my burn at the negative 30-second mark. Node in T-minus 30. Because what that does is splits the burn like as close to the ideal point as possible. It just makes your delta V usage more efficient, which is what we want to do in this situation. So we're just going to perform our burn real casually. I'll turn on the warp so you don't have to sit here watching me do it. Great. Yeah. Well, it's not great, but it'll do. Something happened there because I waited a little bit on my burn, so we didn't actually line up perfectly, but it'll be okay. So now we're going to set our target as Minmus, and we are going to go to the descending node and match our plane with it. And we do this by basically you have your little ascending and descending nodes, and you want to wait for them to spin around, which basically means that you have evened out the planes. So once it gets to less than 0.2, you're pretty much good for all maneuvers. So now we're just going to warp to that. Alright, and so here the burn is 21 seconds, so I want to perform it at about the 10-second mark. It doesn't have to be perfect, but the closer you are to that, the more efficient your burn is. There we go. You can see that our orbit is moving up a little bit in its inclination. That is changing the inclination of the orbit. Moving up is really not the math term for this. Alright. Is that close enough for me? Yeah. That's good enough. Alright. And now we want to burn when we see Minmus appear on the horizon. We're going to burn to it. So That's going to be right about here. We perform our burn, and we should have a Minmus encounter. Well, okay. So we can always spin it around if you miss. So I did just barely there. Alright. There we go. Okay. This should be about 900 delta V to meet up. 950. Yeah. Look at that. Great. So there we are. And I like to do the focus view on Minmus just to see the orbit. And that's really beautiful, actually, because we're coming in pretty close to the planet there, which is what I want. So now we're going to go to our prograde marker and warp to the burn. And let's see. Do we have enough fuel in this tank? Not quite, but we'll be okay. Warp to the burn. And what we'll see, hopefully, if I lined it up right, which I think I did, is that at prograde, we're going to be lined up so that the planet, the Mun, that we're flying to, the moon, is just above the horizon. That's kind of the goal, so we'll see if we did it right, but I'm going to suspect we're pretty close if we're not perfect. And actually, I'm going to wait. It's our burn. Yeah, we can see it coming up over the horizon. And now is about the time to do it. And we'll burn hard. Now, and we will shortly be on a trajectory to meet up with Minmus. We can physics warp this, although our engine's going to die in a second. I'm going to hit Alt-L to lock my stages. That light turns red, which means that I'm no longer staging. It means that I can't accidentally fire off my decoupler mid-flight. If you play for a while, you'll make that mistake at some point. Probably at the end of like a 3-month planned trip to Eve. Because that's the way this game works. Alright, so now I'm going to go to Minmus, focus my view, and I'm just going to pick a point early on in my interaction with Minmus to warp to. And I just click on the point in the orbit and click warp. And the flyby. Right now we're not in orbit. But we will be soon. So it's 8 days away. Whoop, whoop, whoop. I'm really happy that this flyby is close to the... you could adjust your altitude as you fly in to bring yourself closer or further away from the body. And that just helps you to use less fuel, because now this orbital move here is going to be really small in delta V to get myself to where I want. Alright, so now what I'm doing to orbit the body, having not gone over this in this video before, I'm clicking on the Parapsis, and I'm going to burn prograde at the Parapsis until I have an orbital trajectory. And then, because we're going to Minmus, and I know that there's no atmosphere, and I know that the elevation is pretty low, I'm going to bring myself down so that my Parapsis is about at 19,000 meters. So this is perfect, and it's only 200 delta V, so it's really not very much cost at all to perform that. And now I'm going to do my warp, and I'm going to be careful not to miss the planet. If you are a never done this before, you really do want to quick save here, because hitting one too many periods instead of commas is going to warp you on past your burn. And there we go. And right now, like I said, 14 seconds, so we're going to perform the burn at 7 seconds, -7, T-7, because we want to split it, basically on either side of the maneuver node. That makes more sense that time when I explained it. Making these videos is kind of funny, because I have to explain stuff that I've learned from other people, but not necessarily that I've had to talk about. And so it's funny to like try to figure out how do we have a conversation about how do I explain things. It's similar. I'm a teacher, so it's kind of fun. Similar. So now what I'm doing is circulating my orbit. This is a Hohmann transfer, by the way. Probably give credit where credit's due. So I'm basically adjusting my orbit using the reverse of what a Hohmann transfer is. In a Hohmann transfer, you burn out to orbit, and then you orbit that's how we get into a circular orbit around Kerbal. And here we're kind of doing the opposite. So I have my trajectory that's going to fly by. I bring it in so that it's at a lower altitude, and then I'm going to bring the other side in so that they match. It's not really a Hohmann transfer, but it's pretty close. I realized as soon as I said that if anyone actually great is if I'm lucky enough to have a lot of people watch this video, then I'm sure someone is going to be like, no, that's not a Hohmann transfer. Which I don't particularly mind, but would be kind of I knew as soon as I said it that I was going to get eaten alive by the internet goons. Because I believe a Hohmann transfer only exists when you're launching to orbit. But maybe I'm wrong about that. It's the same principle either way. So I'm just burning. So we have a circular orbit. And because I know this planet, this body pretty well, because I know the Minmus pretty well, I know that I can bring my orbit really close to the surface. So we're at 18,000 and 13,000. And that's fine. We're not going to clip, which means we're not going to crash land by accident early. So now let's get our science. And I'll turn on the lights so you can see. I wish that they had internal lights. I think there's a mod that lets you put lights on like the inside of these so that when I open them I can see them better, but it's okay. Alright, so now we're going to do our crew report. We're going to EVA and do a EVA report. And the EVA report, so it says the Minmus Midlands, and that means that once we get close enough to the body, these EVA reports become biome specific. So that means that as we warp around the planet, so I'm going to take us so that we're on the sunny side, we can now come back to the ship, do another EVA report, and get more science. So now we're above the Minmus slope, so this is another 32 science. So every time we do this, we get a little bit more. And I'm just warping to be on the sunny side. I recommend that if you have not played a lot of, if you haven't done a lot of landings, that you do land on the sun side of the planet, because it's going to help you line up your landing a little bit better, because you'll be able to see your target instead of having to guess. One thing that I really wish existed in a more accessible way was a way to track your actual elevation in the game. There are a few ways to do it, but they're just not as convenient as I would like. The idea that my spaceship would not have a clear reader for my elevation is kind of odd to me. Alright. We'll just warp a little bit more. And there. That's going to be a new biome, I think. And now I'm going to start planning my my landing. If you choose to fly like this, where you're picking up these science reports as you go, you can actually pick up hundreds of them just from flying like this. So we're going to land in this beautiful little icy flat here. And so I'm going to warp till we are pretty close to it, like right here. And then I will perform my burn. And the reason I'm warping is you can see the planet rotating a little bit, and I want to make sure that my maneuver is set up to land me right on it, so I'm not going to miss. So now I'm going to pick a maneuver node. Sorry. I'm going to pick a maneuver node that sets me up to land pretty close to my target. So there we go. This is going to put me down right in the middle of that icy flats, and that means that when the planet revolves, I'm not going to get stuck landing on the slope here instead of on the nice flat part. These little blue areas here that are like the solid light blue color that look flat, well, they are flat. Those are the best area to land on. So if we choose to land there, you're going to have the best chance of success. And now I'm going to do my bird. We really want to make sure that we can see it, so sometimes you want to play with your camera angle. Perfect. So now we're just going to fly on in till we get to the surface. And basically, you can warp till you're pretty close. If you've never done this before, I wouldn't get too close to the surface, but it's really okay to fly down pretty low. This is perfectly acceptable. So now I'm switching to surface velocity by clicking right here. And notice it moves my nodes a little bit. And we want to kill the surface velocity. What that means is we want to kill the ship from, we want to stop the ship from moving over the surface. We want it to be falling straight down. The way we do that is we burn, we're trying to move the retrograde marker above the nav vault to the very top of it. And so I'm doing that by burning on the other side, kind of down from it and forcing it up. So I'm doing the opposite, basically, of what I wanted to do. I'm pushing it on up. And you can see that better than I can explain it. So now you see that the retrograde marker is pretty much directly at the top of the nav bar. And that's what we want. Now I'm going to turn on the SAS and bring it to retrograde so that we're lined up. And I'm going to lower my landing gear. And now all we want to do is kill our surface velocity as we land. So hit F5 to quick save if you are someone who's going to let yourself do that. And then we're going to bring ourselves down till we get to about 2,000 meters, and then I'll kill the velocity a little bit. The nice thing about Minmus is because you're moving slowly, one really quick burn can take care of a lot of your surface velocity. So there we go. Now we're down to 18, and I'll burn until we get a little bit lower. I like to look for my shadow, actually, as a little indicator for me that I need to start worrying about landing. I like to spin it around and just say, where's the shadow at? And if I find the shadow, that means that it's time to start really worrying about landing. But you can also start to see more detail on the surface, and that's another indicator. So, now we're going to start burning for our initial landing. We want to be under 10 meters per second, really closer to 6. And there we go. So now we just turn it off. And then we burn real slow, basically. There's our shadow, so that means we are really close to the surface and we can perform our last little bit of the burn. Let me zoom out so you can see it a little bit clearer. And 5, I mean, we're going to try to get as close to 0 velocity as possible. Oh, I want to switch to stability assist because this retrograde marker is going to disappear when I stop moving, and it can cause the vehicle to flip. And we have touchdown in 3, 2, 1. Beautiful. With plenty of fuel to spare. So now we're going to quickly claim our science. Woohoo, that's 125. There are different multipliers. Every planet or moon or body in the solar system has different multipliers, and that's just how valuable the science is that you can get there. And so the atmosphere has one multiplier, the upper atmosphere has another multiplier, the surface has another multiplier, and we use those to help figure out which spots are worth the most. So the surface is worth the most on every body except for the home body of Kerbal. And so what I did there is I just went on EVA and removed the crew report I took while flying so that I could take a new one from the surface. And now we're going to go on EVA again, and we're going to hit space, R, and then we're going to hit S just to back ourselves up. Minmus is a nice place to fly to because you can use RCS really easily here. And there we go. He's put down his little flag. And if you want to learn how to take nicer photos of yourself, you can always hit F2 F2 to remove all the interface, and then you can hit F1 to take a screenshot, and it'll save to your screenshot folder. Alright, so now we're going to take the EVA report. It's worth 40 science. Great. And now we're going to fly on up, and we want to remove the science from the various modules on the ship, because we're not going to be carrying those with us, and now that the ship isn't moving, I think it's a little bit easier to do than from orbit. Ooh, I'm doing so good. Great, so that's that side. Sorry, I'm just really excited. That was really beautiful flying. Sometimes when you do these, it really gets tricky. You can always put a little ladder on, but I don't know. I can normally EVA well enough that it doesn't matter. One thing you don't want to do is hit climb, because sometimes you climb in between the parts, and basically cause your ship to self-destruct. Alright, now I was talking about how good I was doing, and now we're having trouble. There we go. There we go, and now we've removed all the science from the vehicle, so that I don't have to worry when I decouple it. It's going to be fine. We'll board back on, and that is where we're going to pause this video, and I will come back with the second part in a few moments, where we're going to fly out to our orbital, back to the Kerbal. Cool. Alright, we are going to begin our launch back to Kerbal, and I am going to turn on, I'm just going to quick save really quick before I launch, because I recommend you do the same if you have not flown very much. We're going to be aiming for that 90-degree marker, and because there's no atmosphere here, instead of a gradual gravity turn, I can pretty much just fly almost horizontally from the start. We're just going to go through full thrust, close the landing gear. It's kind of a big hill actually, but we won't clip it. And then I want to get up to about 10,000. Yep, perfect. And now I'm just going to set my, we take off the same way you do as Kerbal. The only difference is you can be much more efficient because you don't need to get out of the atmosphere. So, I mean, yeah. Great. Alright, and that burn we'll just conduct in a few moments. If you wanted to, you could do some more EVAs here, although you don't really need to. For science purposes, but it's really okay. And so now we're going to perform a burn, and we're going to have to play with it a little bit. We're going to perform a burn so that we can line ourselves up with Kerbal, so that we don't have to burn the engines again, so that we can basically drop them here, and then get all the way back to the atmosphere and deorbit in one fell swoop. We want to practice doing that now. It's not necessary here. We have enough fuel to probably not be perfect, but we would like to be here because it's going to help us to make sure that our future flights are even better. So we're basically waiting. Yep. And we'll just give it another couple seconds. That's good enough. Great. So that is a good enough orbit. So now we want to fly back to Kerbal. We want to do this in one fell swoop so that our parabosis is at 50,000 meters. We want to land there. There we go. And basically, I'm just moving my orbit until I get a parabosis that is beneath 50,000 meters. We really want to be basically right at 50,000, because if we're at 20, we're probably going to burn up. we're at 60, it's gonna take a long time. So we want to be about 45. There we go, 47. That's going to be perfect. So now we're going to go to our maneuver node, which is going to be located. There we go. Where's that nice blue arrow to show me? We're going to lock onto the maneuver node, and we're just going to warp till we are lined up with it. So, oh, notice right there. This is something you want to watch out for. My Minmus Prapsis is getting a little bit too low there, so I want to just swing it out. And then I'm actually going to have to perform a second burn, maybe out here, that brings us back in. So I'm going to have to set up 2 burns here instead of 1, but that's okay. We'll have enough fuel to do it. Great, so we're going to have 2 burns instead of 1, but that's fine. We just don't want to be in a position where we have to burn. That first burn was going to actually put us through the atmosphere. I mean, not through the atmosphere, through the body of the planet, which we don't want. So, let's warp to our burn. And we want to be really precise about this, so we're going to try to line it up perfectly. Great. So now I just want to check and see, is this still a good trajectory? Well, it actually takes us a little bit too close to the planet, so it's 100,000, 80,000, 22,000 too close, 30,000 too close, 34, come on, 80. Like, this is I mean, it's kind of tedious, but once we line it up right, we're not going to have to burn it all, which is what we want. There we go. Alright, so we are officially lined up, and we're just going to turn our ship on up. We only have to burn 59 more meters per second to get this last maneuver. And then we'll be on our way home. This is a maneuver I'm really going to try to get it perfect. That's about as perfect as it's going to get. So let's check. Yep, 46. That is beautiful. And that hopefully is good enough that we're going to fly by without any residual burn up or damage or anything. So we will just warp on out of the Minmus system and get back into our Kerbal sphere of influence. Well, actually, Minmus is in Kerbal sphere of influence. It's not really an accurate statement. Great. That's my dog, Theodore Roosevelt, jingling under us. Sorry. He's normally pretty quiet for these, but sometimes he is a dog, so you can't keep him silent all the time. So we're going to warp on in till we get closer. And I'm gonna, yeah, we want to close these doors once we get there, because it makes the ship a little more aerodynamic. Perfect. So we're gonna burn closer and closer and closer. Because we're going down to 46, we have to make sure that our heat shield is out when we get this close, because otherwise we're going to burn up. So I'm actually going to perform a maneuver pretty close to here, but not quite here. I'm going to pull the orbit on in as far as I can, while still keeping our Prapsis at the same height. Because I don't want to be in a position where our Prapsis is too low, so 50, 40, right. So I'm just going to do this little maneuver in a few minutes, just to try and get, the higher the apoapsis is, the less the more burns we're gonna have to do around the planet before we get into a landing trajectory. So since I have a little bit of extra fuel, I might as well use it. And I'm watching my liquid fuel because I want to make sure I don't run out all the way. I want to just have a touch left. Let's kill it now. Just check, what's our propsis right now? See, it's a little too low, so we're actually gonna swing it on up by burning this way just a touch. Great. And that is a beautiful trajectory. This should be 1 or 2 trips around the planet and we'll be landed. So I'm going to now decouple all of my science, my, yeah, we're going to activate the decoupler, and we will now be on basically a landing trajectory. Oh, I have to hit Alt-L to turn my staging back on. Now we'll hit space. There we go. Alright, so now we are basically just the capsule preparing for landing. But we have all our science on here, so we're good to go. And you know what I don't know if I've done? I don't know if I've done an EVA at this high altitude, so let's grab that science. Yep, it's always good to take a little extra. Sorry, this is really a problem. When you pull it all out, it's like a glitch. It stacks all of the data on the ship at once, which really like is a lot. So now I'm just boosting till we get to orbit, and now that we are orbiting, I'm going to go back to retrograde, because we're going to burn up pretty hot on this first entry. This is the one where we have a risk of exploding if we don't do something, if we get too close on the first burn, because we're going to be moving at our highest speed. So we want to make sure that we can see our arbalator. Now I'm going to click right here so that if I don't have it on, we can watch this go down. And I'm going to turn on lock on the retrograde. We are actually going to pop out of the atmosphere one more time, and our next burn is going to be a for sure landing burn. And we burned about 58 of our heat shield units, of the arbalator units. So we'll be landing. That's going to be cutting it a little bit short, so we'll just warp around real quick to the other side. And I want you to notice that actually almost half of my orbit, about a third of it, this much, is actually in the atmosphere now. Very little of it is in space, or as we would say, yeah, in space. So we're going to be coming down on the night side, which I try to avoid for these videos. But when you're doing these longer burns like this, where I've been flying around doing the atmospheric entry for a while, it's much more difficult. So I'm going to face retrograde so that our heat shield is facing the heat, basically, is facing the direction we're moving, and then I'm going to turn on the physics warp. But as you can see, when you have the physics warp on, the slightest touch of the WASD keys really flips the vehicle, so you do want to be a little careful with that. And then up here, if you're on map mode, you can use the arbalator units to show you if you're heating. So now that it says 0.01, I know that there's a little bit of heating occurring, but we're not yet at the point where the flames are flying, and now they're starting to appear, and that number is going to start creeping up here. More and more as we move. So, and now we can see we're probably at 150. Pretty soon we're going to be on a complete deorbit trajectory. Yeah, and this number is creeping on up, which means we're starting to use more and more of our abalator, of our heat shield, and the vehicle's heating up more and more. And we can see that, yeah. Alright, so we'll just warp for a while. 35, 34, yeah, we are on a landing trajectory for sure. You can see the AP and the PE swinging around, the apoapsis and the parapsis swinging around. And now we are going to be on a landing trajectory, and we'll be landing in the ocean, it looks like. I've had some people ask me to do a video about landing at Kerbal's center. I will include that in this, but it's hard to do at this stage of the game. I'll do a video on spacecraft recovery. It doesn't matter as much, though, right now, because your vehicles are less expensive. So, whether or not you recover them matters a little less. Once you do get higher up, you're launching your unit and stuff, the more you can get the funds back, the better, because those vehicles do get really pricey. Alright, so, thanks everybody for watching. We're just going to land the ship as quick as possible, and then we will return to orbit. Return to the Space Center, cash in our science, and sign off on this video. I'll try to keep them coming pretty regularly. I'm getting towards my finals, which I'm not particularly thrilled about, so there'll be probably a hiatus of some sort. I think that those are my solar panels that are going to explode. There's something on either side. I think that's what it has to be, yeah, because they're sticking out a little bit, so you can see they're heating up. But that shouldn't do really too much damage to the ship. Our surface velocity has really fallen a lot, and now look at our trajectory. The one thing that's nice, you can see this trajectory is really long. It's not like some of those really sharp ballistic trajectories that are straight up and down. What that means is that our orbit is really safe. And I'm going to spin this around because it's easier for me. The ground is down. Alright. And we are almost on our landing path. We're going to fire the drogue parachutes in just a second. There we go. And they'll slow us down, and we get a fun shot of the sunset with the moon on the horizon. I can now hide the heat shield from view. And we will fire off the next parachute. And now I'll physics warp our way down. We can do a crew report. Career mode, just always check your science. Every single flight, there's always an opportunity to get some more science where you didn't know there was. So I want to make sure that you're really cognizant of that. As you get bigger ships, if you're force warping, make sure that at the 1,000-meter mark, when your parachute expands, that you slow down. Because on bigger ships, it's going to shoot your G-force meter way up high. And when that happens, it can break your ship or blow it up if you're force warping. So you want to be doing it nice and slowly. Alright, and we'll be landing in about a minute. We can actually put Jeb on an EVA now, because we're following slow enough, and do another EVA report, and then board, just to get a little more science. You have to be kind of careful about that, because if you land while he's on the EVA, it doesn't go well. Oh, and let me slow down to my slowest so I can show you one more time this handy little odometer here. This is the actual altitude, so when this hits 0, when it hits the 12 o'clock mark on this odometer inside the crew hatch, that means we've landed. So 3, 2, 1. And that's the only odometer in the game that I know of is right there. So it's not ideal, but we can use that to help us. So now let's recover our vessel. I'm not taking a sample, an EVA report from the water, because I already have, so we can just recover. Alright, there we go, 586 science. That is a huge amount. We're going to really boost our tech tree now. We recovered 1,000 funds, and we have advanced Jeb to level 2. Excellent. So now we want to go to mission control. We have another MUN mission. I know I'm going to be going there soon, so I want to take that. And I also want to do this rescue mission, because I want to go over orbital rendezvous soon. So we're going to be rescuing him from the orbit, and I'm gonna leave the rest of these for now. They're not really high enough prestige for me to worry about. I'm gonna warp till morning just so you guys can see a little better. There we go. And now let's go to the research and development and add some new technologies that we're gonna get. So I'm gonna scroll on. Sorry, I'm gonna scroll on over and pick some things I want. I'm gonna go for heavy rocketry so I can get the skipper and poodle engine. I'm gonna go for advanced flight controls so I can get the landing cam. I'm gonna go for space exploration so I can get the barometer, which is another science device for us. And I'm gonna go for propulsion systems, and I guess I don't really want the docking ports yet, so I'm gonna come and do general construction. And is there anything here I want particularly? My fairings, yeah, that is what I'm going to go for. So we'll take this. Actually, we're going to basically fill the tree up as high as we can, it looks like. So I'm leaving aerodynamics and I'm leaving miniaturization. You notice I haven't built any planes yet. It's because they don't really offer a lot in way of science in the early stages. Yes, you can do the tracking missions or whatever, but those don't really provide that much. So the other thing we can kind of look at if we want is we can go to the administration building, and if you want to, you can always, if you're struggling in the game or you just want to play with this because it's kind of interesting, you can always go and do one of the public relations to convert, you want to convert your reputation into science at this point. So that's this one up here, and it's going to cost us 35 points of reputation, and we can commit to that as high as they'll let us. And so I'm going to do it though at only 35, I think, to start, just a 5% commitment. So that means we're going to get 5% less reputation, and we're going to get a little bit more science. I don't really use these very much because I don't really find that I'm running out of science, but if you want to, that's an option. Just to kind of play with some of the features of the game. Great, so our contracts are looking good. Everything looks great. We will be back later for some more Kerbal space program, specifically doing our moon landing for the next video. I hope you've enjoyed, and this is Brendan the Kerbal Man signing out.